The world outside is growing quiet, and a story is waiting for you in the stillness. Welcome to Midnight Murmurs Studio, your safe harbor from the noise of the day. Find a comfortable place, close your eyes, and let the story begin. Before our story begins, a gentle reminder for your peaceful rest. For the deepest sleep, it's best to keep your phone at a safe distance from your head. So please take a moment to place your phone on a nearby table or chair. And while it's in your hand for this last moment, a quick tap on like and subscribe becomes a quiet signal to us, a soft murmur in the dark that lets us know these stories are a comfort to you. It's what keeps our studio going. Thank you for that. Now, settle in and far to the north, where the pine trees grew tall and the night stretched on for months, lay the silent forest. It was a place of deep, abiding quiet, where the snow swallowed every sound and the sky was a canvas for the dancing green and violet ribbons of the Aurora Borealis. In the center of this frozen woodland stood a cabin built of cedar logs. It did not have electricity. It did not need it. The windows of this cabin glowed with a warmth so intense and inviting that it looked like a dropped star resting on the snow. This was the home of Lumina. Lumina was a woman who seemed to be made of warmth itself. Her hair was the color of spun silver, and her face was lined with the gentle creases of a lifetime spent smiling at the fire. She wore aprons made of thick linen that always smelled of honey, dried herbs, and warm wax. She was a chandler, a maker of candles. But Lumina did not just make candles to hold back the dark. She made candles to heal the spirit. She kept her own bees in the summer, sheltered in hives painted in bright colors. In the winter, she harvested their gift. She believed that beeswax was captured sunlight, stored by the bees during the long summer days to be released when the world turned cold. Her workshop occupied the entire ground floor of the cabin. It was a sensory haven. Shelves lined every wall, filled with blocks of raw yellow wax, jars of essential oils, and spools of cotton wick. Copper pots hung from the ceiling, gleaming in the firelight. The air was thick and sweet, heavy with a scent that made anyone who entered feel instantly drowsy and safe. The winter solstice had just passed, marking the longest night of the year. The wind outside was gentle but persistent, brushing the snow against the log walls with a soft, sweeping sound. Lumina was stirring a large cauldron of melting wax over the hearth when she heard it. It was not the wind. It was the heavy, dragging crunch of footsteps on the frozen path leading to her door. She wiped her hands on her apron and waited. The door opened slowly. A young man stepped inside, bringing with him a gust of biting cold air that swirled around his feet. He was dressed in travel clothes that looked expensive but were worn thin. His name was Elias. He was a musician, a violinist who had played in the grandest concert halls of Europe. But looking at him now, you would see only a shadow. His violin case was strapped to his back, but he carried it like a burden, not a gift. His eyes were dull, sunken, and devoid of any spark. He looked like a candle that had burned down to the very bottom, leaving only a puddle of cold wax. He stood in the doorway, blinking against the golden light of the workshop. "I was told," Elias said, his voice hoarse and quiet, "that you sell light here?" Lumina smiled gently. "Close the door, child. The warmth is precious." Elias closed the door, shutting out the blue-black night. He walked towards the fire, drawn to it instinctively. He pulled off his gloves, revealing hands that were trembling, not just from the cold, but from a deep internal exhaustion. "I don't need a candle for my room," Elias continued, staring into the flames. "I need one for inside. I feel burnt out. The music is gone. The inspiration is gone. I feel dark." Lumina nodded knowingly. She had seen this look many times. It was the look of someone who had given too much of themselves without taking the time to replenish. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a rocking chair covered in sheepskins. "You are not dark, Elias. You are just dim. There is a difference." Elias sank into the chair. The heat of the room wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. The smell of the warm honey wax filled his nose, triggering a memory of summer fields he hadn't thought of in years. Lumina went back to her cauldron. She stirred the golden liquid slowly with a wooden paddle. The wax moved lazily, thick and luscious. "Do you know why a candle burns?" Lumina asked softly, her back to him. "Because of the fire?" Elias guessed. "No," Lumina said, "because of the wick. The wick is the bridge. It draws the fuel up to the flame. If the wick is too thin, the flame drowns. If the wick is too thick, the flame burns too hot and consumes the wax too fast." She turned to face him, holding a spool of raw cotton string. "You, my dear musician, have been burning with a wick that was too thick. You wanted to shine too brightly, too quickly. You consumed all your fuel. Now you are empty." Elias looked down at his hands. She was right. He had pushed himself for years, tours, recordings, practice sessions that lasted until dawn. He had thought that resting was a weakness. Now his body had forced him to stop. "So what do I do?" Elias whispered. "How do I get the fuel back?" "You do not make the fuel," Lumina said, walking over to him. "You gather it, and then you must be melted down. You must become soft again before you can be reshaped." "Tonight," Lumina announced, "we will make a candle for you. But you will not watch, you will help. The cure is in the making." She guided him to the workbench. In the center of the table sat a block of raw beeswax. It was a deep, rich yellow, smelling of pollen and flowers. "Pick it up," Lumina commanded gently. Elias picked up the block. It was heavy and cold. It felt solid, unyielding. "This is you right now," Lumina said, "hard, cold, fragile. If I drop this, it will crack. To make it useful, we must introduce it to the heat." She handed him a heavy iron knife. "Cut it into small pieces. Small pieces melt faster." Elias began to cut the wax. The knife sliced through the block with a satisfying resistance. The sound of the metal cutting the dense wax was dull and rhythmic. With every slice, the scent of honey released into the air grew stronger. He chopped the wax into chunks. It was repetitive work, simple work. His mind, which was usually racing with complex musical scores and anxieties, began to focus on just one thing: the knife, the wax, the cut. Lumina took the chunks and placed them into a double boiler, a copper pot sitting inside a larger pot of simmering water. She did not put the wax directly on the fire. "We never burn the wax directly," she explained. "We use gentle heat, patience. If you rush the melting, you scorch the honey." She handed the wooden paddle to Elias. "Stir it slowly. Watch the solid become liquid." Elias stood over the pot. He began to stir. The steam from the water below rose up, warming his face. He watched the yellow chunks slowly losing their sharp edges. They softened, turning into a thick, golden sludge, and then, finally, into a clear, amber liquid. It was mesmerizing. The transformation from a hard block to a flowing river of gold was happening right before his eyes. He realized that he too felt a little less rigid. The heat of the workshop was seeping into his bones, melting the frost that had settled on his soul. "Keep stirring," Lumina whispered. "Let the heat do the work. You don't have to force it to melt. You just have to let it happen. The beeswax in the copper pot was now fully melted. It was a pool of liquid amber, clear and bright, swirling gently with the heat. It smelled of summer clover and sunshine, a stark contrast to the frozen winter night pressing against the cabin windows. Lumina walked to her apothecary shelf. It was lined with small, dark glass bottles containing the spirits of plants, essential oils. "The wax is the body," Lumina whispered, running her finger along the labels. "But the scent is the memory. For you, Elias, we need something that grounds you, something that reminds you of roots, not flight." She selected 3 bottles: cedar wood for strength, fir needle for the forest air, and a hint of sweet orange for joy. She brought the bottles to the pot. "The wax must be at the perfect temperature," she explained. "Too hot, and the scent evaporates instantly. Too cold, and it won't mix." She checked the thermometer. It was perfect. She uncapped the cedar wood. She held the bottle over the swirling gold. She tilted it. The oil fell in slow, heavy drops. 1. "Stir," she commanded gently. Elias stirred. As the oil blended with the warm wax, the scent exploded into the room. It was a rich, woodsy aroma, deep and ancient. It smelled like walking into an old library in the middle of a forest. Then came the fir needle, sharp and clean, cutting through the heaviness. And finally, the orange, adding a touch of brightness, like the first ray of dawn. Elias inhaled deeply. The scent filled his lungs, replacing the stale, cold air of his travels. It felt like the forest was hugging him from the inside. His shoulders, which had been raised in tension for months, dropped another inch. "Now," Lumina said, "we prepare the wick." She pulled a length of braided cotton string from a spool. It was soft and limp. "This is just string," she said, holding it up. "If we put it in the candle now, it will flop over and drown in the wax. It needs to be primed. It needs armor." She dipped the cotton string quickly into the pot of hot wax and pulled it out immediately. The wax coated the fibers instantly. Lumina held the string taut between her fingers for a few seconds. As the wax cooled on contact with the air, the string stiffened. It became straight, rigid, and strong. "See?" Lumina smiled. "It absorbed the wax. Now it can stand up on its own. This is what you need, Elias. You need to absorb the warmth so you can stand tall again." She threaded the stiffened wick through the center of a glass jar mold. She tied the top around a small wooden stick resting across the rim of the jar, ensuring the wick hung perfectly straight in the center. "The wick must be centered," she murmured. "If it leans to the left or right, the candle burns unevenly. It wastes itself. Balance is everything." The mold was ready. The wax was scented. It was time to pour. Lumina wrapped a thick cloth around the handle of the copper pot. "This is the most peaceful part," she said. "Would you like to do it?" Elias hesitated, then nodded. He took the handle. The pot was heavy, filled with the dense liquid. "Steady," Lumina whispered. "Aim for the center, but do not touch the wick." Elias tilted the pot. A stream of liquid gold poured out. It was viscous, moving slower than water, like warm syrup. It flowed into the glass jar silently. He watched the level rise. It was incredibly satisfying. The golden liquid filled the empty space, hugging the glass walls, surrounding the white wick. It rose higher and higher, capturing the light of the fire and holding it within itself. He poured until the wax reached the very top, leaving just a rim of glass. He tilted the pot back. A single final drop fell from the spout and merged perfectly into the surface. "Beautiful," Lumina breathed. The jar was now full of glowing, translucent light. It radiated heat. Elias held his hands near the glass, feeling the warmth emanation. It felt alive. It felt like a captured sun. "Now," Lumina said, wiping the edge of the jar with a cloth, "we wait." "How long?" Elias asked. "Hours," Lumina replied. "You cannot rush the cooling. If you put it in the fridge, it will crack. If you blow on it, the top will be uneven. It must cool at its own pace in the quiet of the room." They sat back in the rocking chairs. The workshop was silent, save for the crackle of the hearth fire. Elias watched the candle. As it began to cool, a fascinating thing happened. The wax started to change. It went from clear liquid gold to a creamy, opaque yellow. The transformation started at the bottom and slowly worked its way up. It was shrinking slightly as it cooled, pulling away from the glass, settling into its permanent form. Elias felt his own eyelids growing heavy. The intense focus of the pouring was over, and now the relaxation set in. The scent of the cedar and orange was thick in the air, a sedative perfume. He watched the slow solidification of the wax. It was a visual lullaby. No movement, just a gradual shift of state, from chaotic liquid to peaceful solid. Lumina hummed a soft tune, a melody without words that sounded like the wind in the pines. "Rest now, musician," she whispered. "The candle is doing its work. It is storing the energy. You should do the same." Elias leaned his head back against the sheepskin. The golden light of the candle filled his vision, then blurred as his eyes finally closed. The world was warm. The world was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, Hours passed in the quiet cabin. The fire in the hearth had settled into a bed of deep red coals, casting a soft, pulsing light across the room. Outside, the wind had died down completely, leaving the forest in a breathless, frozen silence. Elias blinked his eyes open. He had drifted into a light doze, lulled by the warmth. He looked at the table. The candle was finished. The liquid gold had transformed into a solid block of creamy, pale yellow wax. It looked smooth and dense, like a stone polished by a river of honey. The top was perfectly flat, and the cotton wick stood straight and tall in the center, waiting for its purpose. Lumina was already awake, or perhaps she hadn't slept at all. She was standing by the window, wiping condensation from the glass. "It is ready," she whispered, turning to him. "The wax has rested. It has bonded. It is strong now." Elias stood up and walked to the candle. He touched the glass jar. It was still warm, holding the memory of the heat, but it was solid. He picked it up. It felt heavy, substantial. It wasn't just wax and string. It was a vessel of patience. "Before we light it," Lumina said, handing him a small pair of silver scissors, "we must trim the wick." "Why?" Elias asked. "It looks perfect." "It is too long," Lumina explained gently. "If the wick is too long, the flame will smoke. It will flicker and dance too wildly. It will burn itself out. To have a steady light, you must cut away what is unnecessary." Elias understood. He took the scissors. He brought the blades to the wick, about 1/4 of an inch above the wax. He hesitated, then cut. The excess string fell away. It was a small action, but it felt significant. He was learning to limit himself so he could burn brighter. Lumina handed him a long wooden match. "This is your light, Elias. You must be the one to spark it." Elias held the match. He struck it against the rough strip on the side of the box. A bright flare of yellow light erupted, accompanied by the smell of sulfur and burnt wood. He lowered the flame into the jar. He touched it to the blackened tip of the wick. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the wax at the base of the wick began to melt, forming a tiny liquid pool. The flame caught the cotton. It flickered once, twice, struggling to find its footing. And then it bloomed. A steady, teardrop-shaped flame rose up. It was blue at the base and golden at the tip. It didn't roar, it didn't smoke. It simply stood there, unwavering. The light from the single candle illuminated Elias's face. In the reflection of his eyes, the tiny flame danced. He stared at it. He felt a sudden warmth in the center of his chest, mirroring the candle. It was a quiet feeling. The panic about his career, the fear of the silence, the pressure to perform, it all faded into the background. "It's not a wildfire," Elias whispered, a smile touching his lips. "It's just a light. And that is enough." Lumina said softly, "You don't need to be a bonfire to be seen, Elias. You just need to keep burning."
"Look," Lumina pointed to the window. Elias turned. Through the glass, he saw the sky. The clouds had cleared, and dancing above the tree line was the Aurora borealis. Great ribbons of emerald green and violet light were undulating across the stars. They moved slowly, majestically, like silent music made of light. They didn't strive, they didn't push, they just flowed. Elias walked to the window, holding his candle. The golden light of the beeswax flame reflected against the green light of the Aurora. The two lights met on the glass, one earthly and humble, the other cosmic and grand. He realized that his music wasn't gone. It had just been waiting for him to stop making noise so he could hear it again. The melody was in the silence of the forest. The rhythm was in the slow cooling of the wax. "Thank you," he said to Lumina, his voice steady and strong. "Take the candle," Lumina replied. "When you feel the darkness creeping in, or when you feel the urge to burn too fast, light this. Smell the cedar and the orange. Remember the slow pour. Remember that you can always melt down and start again. Elias packed his violin case, moving with slow, deliberate grace. He placed the candle carefully in his bag, wrapped in wool. He opened the door. The cold air greeted him, but he was armored now. He had the warmth of the workshop stored in his bones. He stepped out into the snow. The path back to the village was lit by the stars and the dancing Aurora. He didn't feel lonely. He felt accompanied by the light. Back inside the cabin, Lumina watched him go until he disappeared into the trees. She smiled, satisfied. She turned back to her workshop. The fire had burned low. The room was dim and cozy. She walked around, extinguishing the oil lamps one by one. The shadows lengthened, wrapping the room in a velvet embrace. The smell of the beeswax lingered, sweet and comforting. Lumina sat in her rocking chair. She pulled a quilt over her lap. She closed her eyes. She listened to the silence of the woods. It was a heavy, protective silence. Her breathing slowed, matching the rhythm of the winter night. The cabin stood firm in the snow, a tiny heart beating in the vast white wilderness. And there, surrounded by the scent of honey and the memory of light, the candlemaker drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, knowing that the spark had been passed on and the night was safe.
And so, our story comes to a gentle close. May your mind be calm and your dreams be kind. If you're still listening, we'll be waiting for you here again with another story from Midnight Murmurs Studio. Until then, sleep well.